reaction then to the ruling today?
Well, evening and evening to your viewers. Of course, we are studying the judgment to make sure that we understand it fully. We welcome the judgment as well because it is consistent with the views that we had expressed when we supported the applicant, when we supported the recommendations of Judge Dikgang Moseneke, especially as it relates to an area of holding free and fair elections. We did note that the apex court in the land have since set aside the proclamation of the election date, gave the minister the powers working together with the IEC to be able to work out a new date, proclaim such a date between the 27th and the 1st of November, but also empowered the IEC to be able to make a determination on whether it is practically possible to hold those kind of elections. These are some of the things that the IEC itself would have previously raised. What this now does is that, and true to the point that that Deselani had raised, that there are a number of implications that comes with the reopening of the voters' roll. But what the reopening of the voters' roll does is that it then allows those that could not register at the registration weekend, because all of us have always been saying that the real challenge of holding elections under these conditions is because of COVID-19. The courts of the land have acceded that because you could not be able to do registration at that specific final registration weekend, you then open that up. Then it means if Pule Mabe could not be registered or was disqualified to become a candidate of 196 in Johannesburg because Pule previously registered to vote at a different place, perhaps because he was attending UJ and had registered to vote at a closer ward there. It now means that Pule can now be corrected under that. So the implications are such that you will also be dealing with candidate registration in terms of what the court has actually empowered the IEC to be able to look into. But when we conclude our National Executive Committee, which is currently in session, we will be able to communicate and provide clarity to our structures, because there has been those out there who have been mischievous, even to a point of posting wrong things in our names on social media, claiming that we would have made certain irrational comments around such a sensitive process as this one. Because elections are important, especially because elections create a platform for citizens to be able to express themselves, construct a government that will be able to fulfill their own desires. So we want every South African, regardless, let me just conclude.
No problem.
We want every South African, regardless of which party they want to vote for, to feel that their right to vote or participate in elections were not necessarily hampered or taken away from them by a natural disaster that they did not participate in causing.
I take it then you feel that you are vindicated somewhat because you were not, as a political party, able to register some of your candidates, and listening to what you're saying then, that there will be then that room that might then make it possible for some of your candidates to then find themselves into this list. I take it then that you are feeling some kind of vindication this evening.
Well, I think it even goes beyond vindication, because when the ANC joined the application of the IEC, which is now a matter that is being discussed, at that time, it had nothing to do with our candidates not being registered. We joined that application long before we could even come to this situation that we find ourselves in. Because if we were to talk on grounds of vindication, it will come across as opportunistic, and it will actually affirm views that were raised by some in the opposition party. The ANC's argument has always been that conditions created by COVID-19 hamper the ability to conduct free and fair elections. We are happy that in their own observation, judges of the land have also made that kind of a determination as it relates to the opening of a voter registration. Because this is one of the issues that we raised, that there are people, even in all our statements we make to the media, that there are those who could not be able to register, because at the voter registration weekend is when our country was experiencing the third wave, and the stringent measures, stringent lockdowns were now imposed, including dealing with political gatherings, our ability to campaign using our own traditional forms and all of that. So the ANC's argument, really, when it joined the IEC's application to the Concourt, had nothing to do with the registration of candidates. That clarity we ought to give to society.
All right, Pule, in 30 seconds, just before we wrap up this conversation, I take it then you're not pursuing the Electoral Court, and if I'm correct, you are then directing those, what you were saying then to the opposition, directly to Helen Zille, who would have posted what then she said may have been, calling into question some of the conduct of the Constitutional Court justices.
Of course, I mean, we must uphold the integrity and credibility of our judges in the land, and must be careful not to make statements that undermine their own integrity. We must also not try to preempt what will be decisions of the court. When the ANC approaches the court on any other matter, all other parties do, we leave it to the court to make a determination. I mean, granted, the court have dismissed the application of the IEC as it related to the extension of the date. But even in the very same vein, the court then went on to make certain observations and arrived at certain determinations, empowering the IEC to be able to check and establish if it will be practically possible to open for voter registration, so that South Africans who they wanted to participate in the process and were at least left out, could then be able to be entered into the voters' roll and exercise their democratic right to vote for parties of their choices.
Pule, thank you so much for your time this evening.